right, and welcoming everyone to Unlocking the Secrets to Restorative Sleep. My name is Munira Jiwa. I'm a Spring Forest Qigong master teacher. I'm here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I'm just so excited to be hosting Dr. Eleanor Stein today for today's very important topic, because this is a topic and this seems to be just something that so many people talk about, and that's their lack of sleep or not having a refreshing sleep. So I'm super excited to welcome you, Dr. Stein, and just to let everyone know just a little bit about Dr. Eleanor Stein. She is a psychiatrist and she specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So she is the person to be speaking with, and she has a lot of tips and techniques to share with our group today. So she has over 3 decades of experience working with people and patients that suffered from chronic pain, chronic fatigue, or long COVID symptoms. And so her big thing is empowering people. So sharing the tips and techniques, giving the education so that people can improve their sleep. So with that, I will like to just spotlight you, Ellie, and have you share your wisdom with us all. And thank you so much for making the time today to share with us.
You're welcome. I feel very honored to be presenting to this group and reading through the answers to the survey that many of you filled out, even though you're a different group in some ways than what I typically work with. Nevertheless, there's certain common threads. So as Munira said, probably you're here today because you're having some kind of sleep problem and you want to learn to improve it. Most likely you're waking feeling unrefreshed. My definition of unrefreshed is you wake up feeling not that much better than when you went to sleep. And the most common causes of this are problems getting to sleep, problems staying asleep, or a poor quality of sleep. And as a result of that poor quality, people experience things like low energy, brain fog, difficulty getting through the day, making mistakes, being clumsy, and even things like being anxious or grouchy or short-tempered. Really, sleep is the cornerstone of good health, and not being able to get a consistent good sleep is a huge problem for many people. And so you want to wake up feeling rested and clear-headed and full of energy. You want to be able to be productive and get through your to-do list each day. And the strategies I'm going to teach you, I'm hoping will help you do that, get rested and more refreshed so that you can enjoy life more. I've been running groups in my medical practice. I'm now retired after 35 years, but I was running groups for many years. And most people came to the group discouraged. They felt like they had tried everything. They were quite knowledgeable, and nothing they had tried had made a substantive difference. So just to give a note of hope from the very beginning is that most people who came to my groups and they learned the rationale and the science behind. So I'm very big, like Munira said, empowerment I think is really important. If you understand the science behind something and the rationale for doing it, you're going to make better decisions and be able to implement strategies more skillfully. And I would say 80 to 90% of people who learn some of the things I'm going to share with you today, and of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, are able to improve their sleep. Quick intro, like Munira said, I'm a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. And I come to this very honestly. I've had sleep problems pretty much my whole life. And then 36 years ago, I became ill with myalgic encephalomyelitis, hence my interest in these, what we now call complex chronic diseases. And of course, my sleep got way worse at that time. And I've been slowly clawing or walking my way back from that for the last 35 years. It's taken a lot of perseverance, and I'm continuing to learn new strategies. And full disclosure, I do not have perfect sleep. I'm not medication free. So I use a combination of all the strategies that I'm going to share with you today. What I'm most excited about is as I'm learning more about, we'll call it circadian biology or circadian medicine, and something new called quantum biology, it's giving me insight into why sleep problems have become so epidemic and why it's virtually universal. Like in my medical practice, I really never worked with a single person who didn't have a sleep problem. And I'm going to scatter some of these newer insights into the presentation. So quick spoiler alert, our modern lifestyle is the bad guy here. So you're going to hear that theme come up many times. So what I'm going to share today is why we don't get enough sleep. And we, I mean kind of the average person, may not describe all of you. What are the health consequences of insufficient sleep or poor quality sleep? The importance of the sun and circadian rhythm. And I saw in the answers to the survey, many of you are already on to this. How to optimize sleep and wake refreshed. Of course, that's the core material that you're going to all be waiting for. I'm going to share my responses or answers to some frequently asked questions that Manira sent me ahead of time that she hears from time to time in the community and wanted me to address. And then at the very end, I'm going to address some of the themes that arose in the survey that you guys just filled out in the last couple days. And then, of course, we're going to open it to Q&A. So all that being said, I'm now going to share my screen. Oh, I think this is going to work, guys. Okay, thumbs up, Manira. Okay, awesome. So this is what we're going to talk about, how to get restorative sleep. And I've just kind of shared what we're going to talk about, so I won't repeat that one. So sleep, this is Professor Matthew Walker. So if any of you are wanting to learn more, he would be one of the sources. And I've got some references at the very end of the presentation. And since it's being recorded and Manira has a copy of the slides, you'll easily be able to get those references. So you don't have to be scrambling and writing tons of stuff down. But his quote, which I love, is that sleep is the greatest life support system you could ever wish for. It's a remarkable health insurance policy. It's democratic, free, and painless. So the beauty of sleep and all the things I'm going to share with you is that they're very accessible. And most people, even people with limited financial means and who have significant health problems, can access many, if not most, strategies. So a quick review about sleep. Many of you probably know this, but for those of you who are a bit newer to it, this is what a healthy sleep supposedly looks like. So you fall asleep at hour 0. You fall deep down 1, 2, 3, 4 into deep stage 4 sleep. Then at about just over an hour, you kind of bounce up into what's actually a lighter stage of sleep called REM, rapid eye movement. That's when dreaming takes place. And then you keep going through these approximate 90-minute cycles throughout the night. And if you have this mythical perfect 8-hour sleep, you're going to have about 5 of these 90-minute cycles. Now, the one thing to notice is that these episodes of deep sleep, the number 4, are bigger at the beginning of the night. So when your sleep drive is higher and you first fall asleep, that's when you're in the deepest sleep. In terms of your brain EEG or electroencephalogram, if you measure that, you're in the slowest wave of sleep, the delta sleep. As the night progresses, the REM periods, the dreaming periods, get longer. And that's why most people wake up remembering a dream. It's because they were actually dreaming when they woke up. So the bad news for many of us who are aging is that we lose sleep as we age. So this 8 hours of sleep that we're all advised to get, is what's typical for a young adult, say a 20 to 40-year-old. Teens and children, believe it or not, need 9 to 10 hours sleep, even teens. And we all know how many of them probably accomplish that. It's probably not a high percentage. And most older people, according to this source, get about 5 hours. So if you're on the, say, above 50 and you're not getting the full 8 hours, don't panic. It may be a normal result of aging. What I haven't really figured out in my reading, and I'm continuing to look for it, is, are we aging because we're not getting as much good sleep? Because sleep is when we do a lot of repair. Or are we not getting as much good sleep because we're aging? Or is it a little bit of both? So I don't have the answer to that question. Now, some people in the questions in the survey asked, what should we be aiming for? So again, this is the perfect scenario. Many of us don't achieve it. And like Manira said, we may not all need 8 hours of sleep. I know since my sleep has improved, I actually need much, much less than I did when I was more severely ill. So according to the sources, the average ideal sleep time is somewhere between 7 and 9 hours. And when you're using a tracker, so I use an Oura Ring. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just kind of saying this is how I get my data. Most wearable trackers give you some numbers for sleep, and most of them give you a number called sleep efficiency. What that refers to is the total amount of time you're asleep divided by the total amount of time you're in bed. Now, the ideal for that number is above 85%. So what that means is the vast majority of the time that you're in bed, it's good to be asleep. And I'm going to explain why that is, the science behind it, a little bit later. About 25% of the sleep time ideally would be deep sleep. Again, as we age, deep sleep decreases. So again, don't panic. Oh my gosh, I don't meet these criteria, but it just gives you a very broad idea of what you could aim for. REM sleep, this dreaming sleep, again, it's about 25% of the sleep night. And then the remaining 50% is stages 1 and 2, which we call light sleep. So I'm going to really quickly, at the risk of being too sciencey, talk about the chemistry of sleep. So what's actually happening in our body that allows us to sleep? It's a balance. It's a three-legged stool between three molecules naturally occurring in our body. One is adenosine, one is cortisol, and one is melatonin. Adenosine is a component, maybe some of you have heard of something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is our body's energy stores. Well, interestingly enough, adenosine is the kind of nucleus or core of that molecule that allows us to have energy. But adenosine on its own, without the phosphates, is the molecule that causes us to be sleepy and to fall asleep. Adenosine builds up. So when we wake up in the morning, our adenosine level is at the lowest it will be in the 24-hour cycle. The longer we stay awake, it will slowly increase. And when it gets to a certain threshold, that's probably a little bit different for each of us, we'll start yawning and head nodding. And if we don't have too much on our mind and we have no blue light shining in our eyes, etc., we're going to just naturally feel so sleepy that we fall asleep. Again, this is ideal. The second molecule so we want adenosine to be high. And the things that decrease or block adenosine, one is napping. So I'm going to talk later. Napping isn't necessarily bad, but if you have disrupted sleep at night, it may be helpful to try cutting back on napping because that will allow your adenosine to increase. The second molecule is cortisol. I'm sure most of you have heard of cortisol. It's the molecule we produce when we're stressed or scared. And we all know that when we're stressed and scared, we're less likely to get a good sleep. And so we want our cortisol level to be low. And I think this is where all of the Qigong that I'm assuming you guys are all doing on a regular basis is incredibly helpful, because Qigong helps regulate the nervous system and calm it and lower cortisol levels. Then we have melatonin, which we kind of call the sleep hormone. We want it to be high. Now, two things interfere with having a high melatonin. One is exposure to blue light after sunset. Blue light turns it off. Boom. There's not very many kind of switches in the body that are on off. This is one of them. So I'm going to talk about later under sleep tips. None of us go to bed at sunset. Right now I'm in Nova Scotia. The sun is setting by 7 p.m. Obviously, I'm not going to bed at 7 p.m. So I'm wearing very attractive orange blue blocker glasses so that the blue light I'm being exposed to, say in a restaurant or in my van, is not going to turn off my melatonin. The second thing that I only learned recently, this is from quantum biology, is that all day, every day, when the sun is up and we're outside, it does not happen at all if we're inside, red and infrared light causes every cell in our body to produce melatonin. It actually produces more melatonin in our cells than the brain produces at night to cause us to sleep. So probably if we're outside more and we're getting exposed to natural sunlight, we're going to have more melatonin in our system, and it will make us more resilient to things like blue light that we may unintentionally come in contact with later in the day. So given that this is our biology, this is the system we evolved to help us sleep, why is our sleep problems so ubiquitous, right? They're universal, at least amongst people with health conditions, mental and physical health conditions. Virtually 100% of people have problems with sleep. In 70 years, so not nearly enough time for us to evolve to kind of get used to this, we've lost 20 to 25% of our sleep. So they've done surveys or studies comparing pre-World War II with now, and the average sleep has gone down like 2 hours. That's a massive amount, and it's mostly due to artificial light. Sleep has become stigmatized, right? So there's famous people, not to point any fingers, who brag that they get by on 3 to 4 hours sleep a night and they're going to sleep when they're dead. They might, well, they won't, they'll be dead, but probably they're misguided. And our bodies, so this is a very big change that our bodies haven't had enough time to adapt to. And here are the consequences. So has very big consequences on our ability to think clearly and concentrate, to remember things. The risk of dementia goes up as the hours of sleep per night go down. For dementia, 5 is the magic number. So if you get less than 5 hours of sleep a night, your risk starts going up. It causes problems with metabolism. So our ability to burn food to make energy in an efficient way and to manage sugar goes down when we don't get enough sleep. It even affects things like fertility. I'm going to talk about this in a future slide, but it increases our risk of cancer. It decreases physical performance, in part because we're tired and grouchy and we don't feel like doing stuff. It decreases our immune function, so we're more likely to get infections. And it actually changes which genes are turned on and off, and so many aspects of how our body functions. So just to kind of talk about the big 5. Oh, I was wrong. Sorry, it's 7 hours. So the risk of dementia starts going up if you get less than 7 hours. We think this is because memory is consolidated during deep and REM sleep. So when we have an experience during the day or we learn something new, say a new Qigong exercise, we won't remember it the next day unless we get a good sleep. So if you want to learn new stuff, sleep is essential. So pulling an all-nighter before an exam, really bad idea. It leads to obesity because it shifts us from burning fat to burning carbohydrate. So we end up storing fat and burning carbohydrate. Even when dieting, people who sleep less lose less weight, even though they're doing the exact same things. And people who sleep less tend to eat more. I think I certainly notice this for myself. When I'm tired, I kind of have this belief maybe food is going to help me feel more energetic. And people who are tired tend to go for the easy processed food treat rather than maybe the food that's going to take a bit more effort. So again, diabetes goes up, possibly due to poorer food choices, but there's biology as well. The pancreas is less responsive to sugar in the body if we get less sleep. The glucose doesn't move as easily into the muscle, so we're more likely to get something called insulin resistance, which is kind of the precursor to diabetes. And they did a study. So right now, studying doing experiments on people in which you deprive them of sleep is no longer allowed because the research is so clear that sleep deprivation is bad for health. It's unethical. So all of the, if you hear something about a study, it's probably an older study, like probably more than 20 years old. But one of these older studies showed that for 1 week, if you prevented people from sleeping 7 hours, they looked pre-diabetic, even though they didn't change anything about their diet. Cancer, World Health Organization lists shift work as a possible carcinogen. That means not enough sleep or disrupted sleep or sleeping at the wrong time increases risk of cancer, and it increases the top 4 types. It also increases the risk that the cancer will grow and spread. And we think this is because there's decreased DNA repair. So I mentioned to you that a lot of repair mechanisms function mostly during sleep. And if you don't have enough sleep, you can't repair your cells. And also the immune system works less well. And one job of our immune system is to seek, find, and kill cancer cells. The last pretty significant health hazard is that, of course, if you're sleep deprived, you have these little things called mini sleeps when you're driving. So they put electrodes on people's heads, put them in, not sent them out on the road, thankfully, but put them in driving simulators and then watched what happens. The people are totally unaware because these little mini sleeps are so short, but they happen. And during those mini sleeps, you are unable to pay attention and the risk of car accident goes up. And I found this statistic really startling, that sleep deprivation causes more deaths by car accident than drugs and alcohol combined. Of course, it decreases productivity at work, productivity at school, and as I've already mentioned, increases death. So that's the bad news. Now we're going to move into the good news, what to do about it. Well, still one piece of bad news. You can't really make up for lost time. So for myself, I've struggled with sleep all my life. Probably there are some consequences that I can't really make up for in the past, but it's never too late to start trying to improve things starting today. 4 pillars of good sleep are circadian, meaning in sync with the sun; continuous, meaning waking up less times during the night, and many people asked about that, so I'm really going to focus on it. Sufficient, that's getting, I would say 7 hours is often the cutoff for many of the health effects. And then good quality. And I have a picture of a cat here because I had a beloved cat for many years, and she was my sleep teacher. Like, she could sleep anywhere, anytime, on any kind of uncomfortable surface. It was amazing. So I'm going to start with circadian. It's really amazing. The more I'm learning, the more I'm blown away. So circadian rhythm is the name we give to the internal clock, so it's inside our body, that regulates us to be more or less on a 24-hour cycle. If they put people in a closed room without any light cues, our body naturally cycles about every 24 hours and about 15 minutes. So we're not perfect. We need exposure to the sun to stick to that 24-hour cycle. And all animals and all plants have this circadian clock. We evolved with the sun, so our biology requires exposure to the sun to stay in sync. The sun shines in our eyes. There's these receptors at the back of our eye, which sends messages to this part of our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is our main body clock. And it controls everything. Our hunger, our digestion, our temperature, our cortisol levels, our heart rate variability, almost anything, blood pressure, like anything you can think of like that is controlled by this part of the brain, the SCN. But what's really unbelievable, and I learned more recently, is that every single organ in our body, every cell, and even every of the 20,000 genes in every cell has its own inner clock. I mean, I find that amazing. And unless we're exposed to the sun on a daily basis, those clocks are all running on their own time, right? Like a massive orchestra of trillions of people with no conductor. The sun is the conductor. Now, the question I get most frequently asked is, do we have to go outside, or can we use a SAD light, a seasonal affective disorder light? Yes, you have to go outside. So the seasonal affective disorder light that many people use for mood, for seasonal depression, is very helpful. It's evidence-based. We know that it helps mood, but it will not help as much as going outside. And here's the reason why. If you look, the SAD lights are regulated that they have to give 10,000 lux. That's the lower limit of what you're going to get by going outside, even in the shade. If you go outside in the daytime, say first thing in the morning when the sun comes up and it's sunny, you're going to get closer to 100,000 lux. So that's 10 times more powerful, and it's going to really have a bigger effect on mood. And bonus, it's going to set your body clock for the day. You can see quickly that indoor environments pale, not to use a metaphor, but they pale in comparison, right, to what you get when you go outside. Now, what also I'm learning about is that not only do you get visible light outside, but you get all of these invisible wavelengths, ultraviolet light and infrared, and they have very powerful effects on the body, even though we can't see them with our eyes. So the ideal is to expose yourself to bright sunlight, ideally for at least 15 minutes as soon after sunrise as possible. Why do we need sunlight? Because the frequency, meaning the makeup, the wavelength of the sunlight changes throughout the day. So when we first get up, it's kind of yellow and orange and red and green and blue. It goes through the whole rainbow, and then it goes to ultraviolet. Ultraviolet is at its peak in the middle of the day, and then it kind of goes back down the rainbow. And again, at sunset, you get a lot of the softer yellow, orange, and red hues. No indoor light, even circadian bulbs, have this complexity and variety of wavelengths, and we need all of them. If you work inside, try to get outside for an hour a day at midday. So presumably that might be a lunch break. And then get out in light again around sunset. So the sunrise sets your clock for the day. The more time you can be outside, the better to get all of these healing wavelengths. And then at sunset, that gives your body clock a second signal that, okay, it can tell by the wavelengths it's picking up that it's getting towards sunset, and it starts winding down all of your systems for bedtime. Try to decrease blue light exposure when the sun is down. It's awkward, it's inconvenient, it can make a massive difference for some people. Everyone's sensitivity to blue light is a little bit different, but it's not good for anybody. And the research is starting to pour out, proving this is true. So use natural light during the day whenever possible. I'm sitting in my van. It's becoming towards dusk here, so you're going to probably see me get darker, but I use natural light all day. And then if you are going to be inside, purchase bulbs that are full spectrum. And there's really only one bulb I've found so far, so I'm not promoting the company. Don't have shares in it, but there's one bulb I've found so far that's a combination of blue LED, which is legislated by governments. So it's very tricky to work within the legislation and have the LED energy saving bulb. And they've added a tungsten filament that creates all of the red and infrared frequencies. So I've just ordered one of these and I'm going to install it in my van in about 3 weeks when I arrive at the place where I've got it delivered to. Okay, so now I'm moving into the hardcore strategies, which are part of cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. Now, for any of you that have a complex chronic disease like myalgic encephalomyelitis or fibromyalgia, this is very different than the evil cognitive behavior therapy that was placed upon the community that did a lot of harm for people. So this is not telling people they're not sick or they need to exercise more. This is strictly using strategies that leverage our brain's natural capacity to sleep and try to strengthen it. There are 4 components. I'm going to go through each one. So the first one is to retrain our brain. Our brain is plastic. It's constantly picking up on what we're teaching it, what we're experiencing, and then it hardwires so that we can do that better and more in the future. So if we are in bed and we're not sleeping, even if it's for very valid reasons, our brain notices that and it says to itself, ah, I get it. The new learning is that bed is a place to go and toss and turn. This happens to most people who develop insomnia. It's not their fault, right? They didn't do it on purpose. But once you develop insomnia for whatever reason, you have a new child, you have a partner who's snoring, someone in the family is sick, and you're kind of more alert than usual, listening whether they need help, you're pregnant, like anything like that, not your fault. But unfortunately, the brain is constantly wiring and it says, aha, bed and not sleep go together. To reverse this unconscious conditioning, you want to go to bed only when sleepy. So one of the questions that Manira asked in the survey is, what time do people go to sleep? And some people are going to bed really, really early, which wouldn't be a problem as long as you're getting up equally as early, right? So the Dalai Lama, I don't know, he goes to bed at like 7, but he gets up at 4:30. So if you have that kind of a schedule, that's okay. But if you're going to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock and you're not getting out of bed until 7 or 8 o'clock, then that's a problem because it means you're in bed quite a bit when you're probably not sleeping. So the strategy is go to bed when sleepy and get out of bed if you're not sleeping. This is everyone's least favorite tip because it really sucks, right? You're tired, you really desperately want to sleep. And I'm telling you, you've got to break this unconscious conditioning and teach your brain bed is for sleep only. So that's the strategy to use if you're having trouble falling asleep. Stay up until you're sleepy. Even if that's 2, 3, 4 in the morning, it's the first step to letting your brain know, go to bed only when sleepy. You'll fall asleep quickly, much more quickly if you're very sleepy. And chances are you'll be tossing and turning awake less in the night. So the second strategy, so that's if you're having trouble falling asleep. Basically, the strategy is stay up later. I know that sounds pretty simple, but it's amazingly effective. This strategy here is the one that many of you are going to be interested in because it's the strategy for people that are waking up multiple times in the night and having trouble falling back asleep. That's my personal problem, so I'm very sympathetic to this situation. So basically what the research shows is that if you're waking up multiple times, it means your sleep drive, this adenosine molecule that I talked about earlier, is not high enough. You don't have enough of it. And to increase it, you need to be awake more so that adenosine will be higher and it will give you a more consolidated, deeper sleep when you do go to bed. Sleep restriction means measure the amount of time you're currently sleeping. So let's say it's 6 hours and you are dreaming and yearning for a 7 to 8 hour night, but you don't know how to accomplish it. If you're currently sleeping 6 hours, that means your body has the capacity to do 6 hours. You set a sleep time, very rigid, that you stick to, that's 6 hours plus 30 minutes. The most important time is not when you go to sleep. So most people think when I go to sleep is very important. It's actually not that important. What's really important is when you wake up, because that's when you start the day. That's when you go outside and expose your eyes to the bright sunshine. That's when you set your circadian clock. So say you're sleeping for 6 hours, you decide to set your alarm for 6 a.m. That might be painful. If your current wake time is like 10 a.m., you're going to have to do it obviously in gradual steps. Baby steps always works better. And then you count back 6.5 hours and you don't let yourself go to bed until 11:30 p.m., no matter how tired you are. You put cold water on your face, you watch something that will keep you engaged, whatever it takes. What this does is the first few nights you do this, you're going to fall asleep, you're going to wake up in your usual way, and you're not going to fall back asleep, and you're only going to get like 3 hours of sleep, let's say. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be cursing the day that you came to this presentation because you're so fatigued. But the adenosine level in your body is going to go up each day that this happens, that you get less than your usual amount of sleep. What this means is that the next night, your adenosine level is higher and you're going to get a better sleep. And little stepwise fashion, this will keep increasing. And most people find that in as short a time as a week, they start getting a little bit better quality sleep. And within 2 to 3 weeks, they can make quite a significant shift. I have to make a caution. This is not for everybody. This is only for people that are lying in bed awake multiple times a night. If you're hypersomniac, meaning you're already sleeping more than 9 hours, please do not use this strategy. You need all the sleep you're getting. And if your sleep efficiency number on your tracker, or you do it by paper and pencil, is already above the magic 85%, you don't need this strategy. Right? So one of the keys to CBTI is just use the strategy that you need. Don't do them all. Calm the mind and the body. This is what Munira is an expert in. So I have very little to say about this. I'm sure many of you are better at this than I am. One of the things that does keep people awake often is they start thinking, right? They go to bed and their brain turns on because for whatever unconscious experience has happened, their brain goes, oh, bed is a great place to think about the day and problem solve for tomorrow. No, you want to tell your brain, bad idea. So to change it, you want to set a time for thinking, reflecting, and planning earlier in the day so that when you go to bed, you can say to your brain, we've already had our constructive worry time for today. There's no emergencies. And then you're going to shift your mind to something else like a meditation or counting or something very boring that's going to help you fall asleep. Do pleasurable and relaxing activities before bed. Emphasis on the relaxing, right? So a lot of people knit or do needlepoint or maybe read a book, but not a thriller. That would be a bad choice. I looked at the answer to that question, what do most people do before bed? Quite a few of you read. So I would say that's totally fine. Wear your blue blocking glasses while you read so that you're not, waking your whole system up with your reading light. And probably don't read your most thrilling, whodunit novel right before bed, because now you're not going to want to go to sleep. I tend to read nonfiction before bed because it's kind of heavy and doesn't I'm not like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in the next chapter of quantum biology? Try mindfulness meditation. I'll add here Qigong. Morning and evening to train your body into that relaxed state, progressive muscle relaxation, paced breathing. Again, I'm sure you're learning a lot of these strategies in your classes with Manira. So one of the specific pace breathings I really like is Dr. Andrew Weil. It's a 4-7-8. You breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, breathe out for 8. Whenever your out breath is longer than your in breath, it activates the vagus nerve and it calms your nervous system. HeartMath is a really nice biofeedback app for people that are struggling and you're not sure if you're doing it right, quote unquote. There was air quotes there. You put a little sensor on your ear. It coaches you in breathing and focusing your attention on positive emotions, love and calm and patience and so forth. And then it gives you an auditory or a visual feedback so that you can see really almost in real time. It's a couple second delayed, but you can pretty much see how you're doing, and it teaches you how to adjust your breathing and your thinking. And of course, I'm adding Qigong here. There's some common sleep myths that sometimes keep people up, and one of them I'll call kind of the perfectionism. So I'm telling you 8 hours is supposed to be ideal, but I hope I'm getting across the message it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not right for all of us. You have to really be aware of your own body. If you hold out that you need that 8 hours no matter what, it's going to stress you out. If I wake in the night, if I don't get enough sleep, it's going to have a negative effect. You can see your neurons deconstructing and dementia setting in. This is not helpful because when you're stressed, it's harder to sleep. So an attitude of just saying, I do things at night like saying, I'm practicing breathing, I'm practicing being, I'm practicing counting, things like that, rather than, oh my gosh, I need to get to sleep really soon or I'm going to be wrecked tomorrow. So messaging is really important. Again, this is a common one. People say, well, maybe if I spend more time in bed, even if I'm not sleeping, I'm resting, and that's going to help me feel better the next day. It might, but it's also programming your brain that bed and not sleeping are a great combination, and so you don't want to do that. So better to get up than to lie in bed. And then there's the belief. I'm a psychiatrist, so in mental health, a lot of people have this belief that everything going on with them is because of a chemical imbalance, and they can't do anything about it. So I just want to say, absolutely untrue. When it comes to things like sleep, and even increasingly, I would say mental health as well, there's a lot we can do. We can leverage a lot of our biology to improve our sleep. So even if you're like me and you've had poor sleep your whole life, like my sleep is better now than it ever has been, and I'm hoping to keep improving it. So these are some of the questions that Manira asked me to address. Manira, would you like me to go through each of these, or are there certain ones? Okay. So I'll try to keep it moving here. So a big common question is sleeping pills. I use them, okay? So I'm not going to be hypocritical and say nobody should use them, they're all bad, but here's some of the facts, the research that can help you decide for yourself. The negatives are, of course, there's the positive. So the positive is not on this slide, but the positive is probably better to get some sleep than no sleep, right? So in my medical practice, I worked with so many severely ill people who were literally some nights getting no sleep at all or a couple of hours sleep, and taking sleep supplements or sleep medication made a significant difference to them and allowed them to function. The downside is they don't produce a natural sleep. And just like natural sunlight is better than artificial light, natural sleep is better than, say, a drug-induced sleep. They are associated with a higher risk of what we call all-cause death. So people die sooner when they're on sleeping pills. It's not a massive difference, but it is measurable. They also appear to get higher risks of cancer and dementia. Now, we don't know whether the poor sleep is, so people on sleeping pills are obviously taking them because they have poor sleep, right? So we don't know, is it the sleeping pills that are associated with these poor health outcomes, or is it the underlying sleep problem? People have tried to look at this, and it looks like the signal is tending towards there's probably a cumulative effect. We've already established that poor sleep is associated with these bad outcomes, but it looks like adding sleeping pills to the mix may not help. Oh yes, and then there's the recent article I read that some sleeping pills actually unwire new learning. So say you do an awesome class with Manira, you learn some new Qigong, I don't know what you call them, routines, and then you take a sleeping pill that night, you might not remember the routine. Only you are going to know whether it has that effect for you. So I would just say, with this information, be self-aware and try to judge for yourself. So the message is that being unconscious isn't the same as being asleep. It doesn't have the same health benefits. For this reason, if you look at any official guidelines, medications are only recommended for short-term use. However, for some people in some circumstances, they are extremely helpful. And you have to make an individual decision with the advice and consultation with your healthcare team. Question about napping. So I did refer to it earlier that when we nap, the level of adenosine, the thing that helps us feel sleepy, goes down. So we all know that, right? You take a 2-hour nap in the afternoon, you feel wide awake at midnight, and you're thinking, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. On the other side, however, short naps help consolidate learning. So say you learn something really hard and it kind of fatigues you a little bit and you think, oh, I'm just going to lie down for half an hour. That appears to help consolidate that learning so that you don't lose it. The best naps, according to the experts, are 20 to 60 minutes, 8 hours or more before you're planning to be asleep. So if you go to sleep at 11, you'd want to take your nap before 3. So this is tough, right? Most people are feeling tired maybe at 4. So the recommendation would be if you make it to 4 or 5 o'clock, probably try to stay awake. There's other ways of consolidating learning apart from napping. So there's something called non-sleep deep rest, and that's a bit of an umbrella term to describe calming activities such as self-hypnosis, yoga nidra, and meditation. Probably not Qigong, because Qigong you actually have to be like upright and paying attention. So I was asked, what's the best bedtime? So I've already given a hint about that. The wake time is much more important than the bedtime. So I would say there is no best bedtime, other than over time, you want to get on a regular schedule. So if you're, what I really recommend in my community is to be self-aware and figure out when in the night do you get your best quality sleep. If you're a lark and you get your best quality sleep between 9 and midnight, then that should be the start of your sleep window. But if you get your best sleep at 6 to 9 in the morning, then you might want to go to bed later so that you can work with your biology instead of against it. And again, the best bedtime is when you're sleepy. And even if that's a bit different from night to night, that's better than going to bed and lying there awake. I was asked, should I use an alarm clock? So a regular wake time is so important. that I would say if you need an alarm clock to achieve a regular wake time, then it's worthwhile. I used to get up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock. Like I had pretty severe ME and I slept for 12, 14, 16 hours, right? Getting up before noon was a challenge. I've made significant changes. I'm working on my circadian rhythm and I now have my phone set to 6:15 every morning. And most days I wake up in the 15 minutes before my alarm clock. So again, the brain pays attention. And if you wake it up at the same time every day, it starts figuring out for itself when it should wake up. And at first, of course, you're going to feel tired, right? Because you're going to feel like you didn't get quite enough sleep, but your adenosine is going to go up and you'll be a bit sleepier a bit earlier the next day. I would say a good bedtime routine is so variable. So I would say the most common mistake is starting it too late, right? Because people are busy. Oh, I could just do this. I could just get this done. I could phone this person, make this lunch, etc. before bed. The body cannot decelerate from 100 to 0 like that. So we have to work with our body, and everybody's different. Some people are going to wind down more quickly than others. So I would say observe what your wind down time is. Experiment, try 1 hour, 2 hours, see what works. And then also observe what activities help you wind down. Because again, everybody's different, but it's those pleasurable but relaxing activities that are probably going to be the most effective. And here's some suggestions. Hot bath, warm milk, paced breathing, reading a book, coloring, knitting, meditating. So then I was asked, what about magnesium? So I did a little search of the medical literature. Increased magnesium in diet seems to improve sleep. So a diet naturally high in magnesium. Supplements may improve sleep. The literature's a little bit less clear. If you're going to try, I don't have a list here, but I think green leafy vegetables and certain nuts and whole grains and seeds are rich in magnesium, but it's easy to go online and get a list of foods. But what I would say is if you are wanting to try a sleep supplement, I'm coming out with a blog just next week on magnesium and sleep, so you could check my blog page for that. Magnesium glycinate is one of the best for sleep and relaxation. You probably need to take about 500 milligrams. So usually that's somewhere between 1 to 2 to 3 tablets, capsules, depending on the size. And I would say try for about a month. And if it's not helping, cut your losses and move on, right? Not everything works for everybody. I was also asked about melatonin. So melatonin, believe it or not, is another one of these hormones that we make. I think I mentioned this before, when you're exposed to natural sunlight, infrared light in particular. So the most melatonin is going to be coming from being outside as much as possible and making it naturally. That will be more powerful than any supplement. If you are going to use a supplement, you need a small dose. The 5 to 10 milligram mega doses are not necessary. It does shorten the time it takes to fall asleep, and it helps night owls move their sleep-wake cycle a little bit earlier. And it's also beneficial for shift workers and people crossing time zones. The goal is, or the most effective, is to take it 2 to 3 hours before your intended sleep time. So if you're crossing a time zone, you want to take it 2 to 3 hours before the time that you want to be asleep in the new time zone, right? So say you're going to be traveling in 3 days, you might start taking melatonin 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour in the direction of the new time zone to help you be ready to adjust. Meditation, I think, has some of the most powerful evidence, more so than supplements. It's equal to other proven active treatments. It's way better than doing nothing. So that's type of study, right? They compare it to doing nothing. Did it help or not? What's really impressive about meditation is because you're learning and you're rewiring your brain to be calmer, the effects last for several months after you stop meditating. So that's very different than medication or supplements where the effects stop the day you stop taking them, right? Because there's no rewiring in the brain with medication. Well, not as much, let's say, with medication and supplements. So that's why behavioral strategies are generally more powerful and more long-lasting. They think the benefits might be due to you're training your brain to not be thinking as much, and you're actually changing brain connectivity. So they've done functional MRIs showing that when you meditate, you rewire your brain, you make it calmer, calm down the amygdala, you upregulate the prefrontal cortex so that you're more in control, you're better able to focus, and you're able to sleep better. So of course, Manira asked me, what about Qigong? So apparently, believe it or not, there's a meta-analysis. So that's a very strong form of evidence of 13 studies that shows that medical Qigong, probably of the type that you're doing, improves subjective sleep. Most of the subjects in the studies looked at had a medical condition, so they were doing it for a reason. The dose was, oh, was that per week? No, that seems like a lot. 300. Oh, was that a year? Okay, forgive me, I don't know over what period of time is that dose, but just to say the dose varied. So you don't have to do a ton every day. Seems like if you do it periodically throughout the week, it may have benefit. And interestingly, the benefits were seen more in women than men. Unfortunately, the quality of the studies was poor, meaning they can't rule out that maybe some other behavior that the people were doing contributed to the benefit. So to sum up, most people don't get enough sleep. The number one cause is our modern lifestyle, predominantly that we're inside, we're not exposed to the sun, and then at night we're exposed to blue light. The goal to improve is to stabilize circadian rhythm, decrease fight and flight, and train your brain where and when you want it to sleep. There's a lot of references. Probably Manira can make those available to you. Some of them are papers, but this is a great book. It's called Quiet Your Mind and Get to Sleep. Colleen Carney, I believe, is in Toronto, and her co-author lives in California. And then the Matt Walker book, if you're a science geek like me and you want to know what's happening at the brain level with sleep, his book, Why We Sleep, is really amazing. Now, Manira is going to put in the chat a link. I created a handout which has some of the tips I shared with you and some additional tips as well. And if you're interested in that handout, she is going to post a link so that you can access it, I believe. And everything that I've learned over the past 35 years of medical practice, I've mentioned that I've retired. So now my goal is to try to get that information out to people who need it. So on my website, I have a bunch of free information, and then I have a bunch of courses. Some of them are self-study, and one of them is a really short module on sleep. So it's just on sleep. I kind of took it out of my bigger self-management course, and it will go through some of the things I shared with you today, but in a little bit more detail so that you can implement them correctly. And most of what I offer is to benefit people with complex chronic diseases. So people with chronic fatigue and chronic pain conditions. And I offer self-study, and then I have a live membership where I'm teaching kind of the newest things that I'm learning. And it's actually today, I had it earlier today. It's every other Thursday. And all of that information is on my website. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And just going to see. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of the survey questions. Because you know what? You guys were superstars. When I looked at the answers, I thought this is a group of very informed, health conscious people that are already doing a lot of things right. How much time do you spend outside on most days? Many of you are spending 2 or more hours a day. Sometimes when I give the talk on sunlight, people say, kind of, what's the least amount of sunlight that I can get away with? And what I'd like to say is that's the wrong question. The better question is, how could I find ways to be outside as much as possible? Now, many of us live in Canada in really cold conditions in the winter. So for us, the good news is even if you're sitting next to an open window, still chilly, but possible, right? And there's rays of sunlight coming in the window. You don't even have to be in the direct line of the sun. Just having an open window so that the rays aren't being blocked by glass is better than nothing. How many hours before bedtime do you ingest the last calories for the day? Wow, I forgot to mention this, but this is really important. So the sunlight is setting our suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the number one clock in the body. But when we eat is the number two signal. So as soon as you eat in the morning, that gives your body an additional message that it's daytime. And not until you stop eating, so that could be eating or drinking calories, in the evening does the body get the message that now you're winding down for bed. So the recommendation from a circadian perspective is to stop eating about 3 hours before bed. And I was blown away that most of you are doing that. That's something I struggle with personally, so I was super impressed. Many of you have what I think is the most difficult problem, which is waking in the night and then having trouble getting back to sleep because, of course, you're not as sleepy, right? Because you've just slept 3 or 4 hours. You've taken the edge off the adenosine level. So the general recommendation is a combination of those two cognitive behavior strategies that I shared. The first one is if you're not sleeping, get out of bed so that your brain really gets the message that bed is a place for sleep. And if you're waking multiple times, try the sleep restriction. That increases adenosine and it's going to give you a more what we call consolidated sleep. You might not sleep the beautiful 8 hours, but waking up less leads to a better quality sleep. I think I've addressed the pre-bedtime activities. I think reading or watching TV, stretching, meditating, they're all good as long as you've got your blue blockers on. Now, many people ask me, what's the best brand? Of course, I've only tried the ones that I've bought. They seem to be equal. The cheapest blue blocker out there is made by Honeywell and it's called UVEX. So UV light, X out light. I recently listened to someone who's quite knowledgeable, who's tried many, many brands, and she actually has a machine that she can test the glasses to see, are they for real? Is blue light coming through? And she said that the Honeywell glasses are pretty good. So I would say to stay on a budget, you should be able to get them delivered to your house for less than $20 Canadian, and they could make quite a significant difference. You were asked how much caffeine you take in. Now, I forgot to mention earlier that the other thing that blocks adenosine is, you guessed it, caffeine. It's a temporary blocker, right? So you drink or eat caffeine, you block the benefits of adenosine. So you have an artificial sense of alertness or awakeness. And then as the coffee wears off, your adenosine is still there. It doesn't make it go away, but it just blocks it temporarily. Now, some people are way more sensitive to caffeine than others. So I would say, again, self-awareness is key. If you're one of these super sensitive people, you may not choose to take caffeine because it's just too disruptive to your circadian rhythm. If you're less sensitive, you may be fine to have a couple of cups every day. I think I'm going to leave it there and see whether How is that, Manira? Would this be a good time to open it up to questions?
Yeah, I think this is a great time. And then there are some questions also in the chat.
Okay. Do you want maybe, because I haven't been looking at the chat at all, do you want to maybe
Sure.
run by me the questions that you think I haven't already covered?
Okay, one question here is if you go outside with a lot of sunscreen on, are you still benefiting from the sun?
No, you are not. That is a fantastic question. Whoever asked that is really thinking. Well done. Um, or sunglasses, right? So the benefits of being out in the sun, some of the benefits come through the eyes. I'm working on a whole talk on that for my community, like which benefits come through the eyes and which benefits come through the skin and at what time of day, trying to get all that information together. So you don't want to wear, like when I go out now in the morning, I take my glasses off, even though my vision's a bit fuzzy. I take them off so that the full light is not reflecting off my glasses and it's going to be hitting my eyeballs. And then if it's warm enough during the day, I try to have as much sun on my skin as possible without sunscreen.
Another question here, does the sleep have to be done all in one go, or can you split it up during the night?
I probably don't have enough expertise to answer that question. I've heard experts discuss it, and I've heard them come out on both sides of that question. So I would say, in general, the less awakenings we can have, the better. And I am super thrilled that I think I'm training my brain. Like I used to be up for hours in the middle of the night and not able to get back to sleep. And I think the thing that for me that's made the biggest difference is really like literally white knuckling it some nights and not going to bed till I'm like head nods sleepy.
Okay, there's another just comment question here. I've heard you need to get the sunlight within the first hour after waking, but in the winter, for those of us who live in the north, the sun isn't up that early. So is it okay to
Yeah.
wait to go outside until the sun rises?
Absolutely. So you get different wavelengths of light at like throughout the day cycle. It's constantly changing. And that's why going outside multiple times is more beneficial than just, say, going out one time. The light you get as soon as the sun crosses the horizon is bright blue light, and that's what gives your eyes the message it's daytime. Later, you're going to get ultraviolet light, which is going to help you make hormones and is going to give you vitamin D. If it's not winter in the Northern Hemisphere, in which case you're getting none of that. The ultraviolet light, the ultraviolet A rises when the sun is about 10 degrees on the horizon. So again, it's like a rainbow that you're going through. Different times you're getting different benefits. The UVB, the one that gives you vitamin D, is at its peak between 10 and 2, but not in the, only if you're within 37 degrees of the equator in winter. And then again, the evening just before sunset. So if you can, I mean, if you have a job, you can't just kind of walk out of your job at 9 o'clock when the sun's rising in the north, right? So you have to do the best you can. Do the best you can is better than being perfect.
And there are a few questions, people wanting the link for the glasses and the light bulb, but someone is asking with respect to those Honeywell glasses, what's better, clear or colored?
Absolutely colored, clear don't work. So clear will do nothing. They have to be orange. That's the only way they're going to absorb the blue light and not let them through into your eyes. So if someone's trying to sell you a clear blue blocker, possibly not a company you should go with. Honeywell sells clear glasses, but they're more safety glasses, right? So if it's specifically the blue light blocking, they want the darker, the better. So for some people, they're very sensitive even to the blue light coming off screens, even in the middle of the day, and they wear yellow glasses. And then as the day progresses and you're moving more into evening, they change to orange glasses, which block more blue light. And some hardcore enthusiasts, after dinner, they change to red glasses and they block the most blue light. So the closer you get to bedtime, the more important it becomes to try to not expose your pupils to blue light.
Mm. Again, another light question for those, again, of us who are in the north on days the sun isn't out at all. Are the light
Mhm.
lamps helpful? Any rules about it? I think you've
Yeah,
mentioned.
I mean, I suppose it's better than nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But remember that you're not getting the full spectrum. So even in the northern hemisphere, uh, unless you live in the far Arctic, okay, if you live in Iqaluit, maybe you're literally getting no light for several months. But for most of us, even if you have a couple hours of sunlight during the day, you are getting red and infrared. You can't see it because infrared is invisible, but getting outside, even if it's cold, even if you're bundled up in clothing, because lucky for us, infrared penetrates clothing.
Do devices such as watches that measure sleep have any benefits?
Yes, that is a great question. So the answer is an annoying, it depends. If you're a relatively good sleeper, so the things that the watches and the trackers measure well are for how long are you actually asleep? They're very good at determining that. The newer ones, the older ones were horrible, but the new Garmin's and Fitbits and Aura, they're pretty good at that. Um, that sleep efficiency number, like are you close to that 85 or are you tossing and turning a lot in the night? Um, what they're not so good at, especially if your sleep quality is poor, is distinguishing between the different sleep phases, like the REM sleep and the light sleep and the deep sleep. So I would say it's a great tool to figure out how many hours of sleep are you getting and is your sleep efficiency good? But I wouldn't put quite as much credibility on the sleep phases or stages, especially if you're not a good sleeper. Like I went for an overnight sleep study and I found out mine was totally inaccurate in that regard.
Okay. And someone's asking if you can please go over the equation for staying in bed again.
Yes. So you measure how much you're currently sleeping, whatever that is. Say you're sleeping for an hour here, an hour there, 2 hours there. You add that up, take out the spaces, and you get a number. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's 6 hours. You add 30 minutes because you go to bed, you're going to restrict your sleep, but even the best sleeper in the world takes a few minutes to fall asleep, maybe has to get up once to pee. That's perfectly normal. Maybe has a little bit of disruption towards morning. So you need a bit of a buffer, right? You don't just fall asleep, sleep, and wake up. That's nobody human. So you add 30 minutes, then you decide what is the wake time that's the most beneficial for you. And the wake time might be very late if you're someone like I used to be. It doesn't matter exactly when it is, but what matters is that you keep it very consistent and you count back that amount of time, so 6.5 hours, and that is your kind of golden rule not to go into bed before that time. So say it was the 6 hours that you're currently sleeping, but you're waking up 3 or 4 times, right? So your sleep is very disrupted and unrefreshed, and you feel crappy and you want to improve it. So say you set your alarm for 6 a.m. every morning, no matter what, no matter if you barely slept or you're feeling exhausted, you've got an important meeting, this is a hard intervention. You get up no matter what. That raises your adenosine so that the next night and the next night and the next night, you're more likely to fall asleep more quickly and to wake up less often. And like I say, it takes somewhere between 1 and 3 weeks, usually closer to 1, to see some shifts with that.
Mm. All right. Someone's asking about the alarm clock, the color of light. Is there a preferable color?
So I guess you're talking about like the light, like
It
that's
comes,
showing
yeah.
you the time or something like that
Mm,
that's on all night. So I
yeah.
would say block it. So at home in my house, I have a so I do an additional strategy. There's so much more to this sleep story than what I've had time to share, but I also turn off a lot of my power at night. And therefore, my clock radio next to my bed is flashing, super annoying. You do not want that. When I turn it on in the morning, of course, it's off at night entirely. So I just have a cardboard thing covering it so that it won't bug me. So if you have, ideally, you would have no light. You'd have no light in your room, not even little indicator lights. So the ideal alarm clock would be one with no lights.
Hmm. Yeah, someone's asking about electronic devices should be turned off.
Yeah,
Yes,
not in the turned off and not in the bedroom.
not because it's amazing how like our skin absorbs light. So if there's even that little
Absolutely.
crack coming out from, your window, your skin, even if your eyes are closed, you're still feeling. I always make fun of my husband because he wants everything blacked out.
Yeah.
And I keep telling him, just close your
That's
eyes.
what's
But
recommended. No,
yeah,
he's really, I have
he's
to
sensitive. He's
side with
very
your
sensitive
husband
to
on
it.
this
Yeah. Oh,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I bug him, but I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
All
So in
right.
my van, I have like blackout and I have blackout on my face because I do have little indicator lights, but I've just purchased some stuff I'm going to put over all those lights. So, it's a work in progress, right?
Hmm.
So one thing I would say is don't get overwhelmed. Like I've shared a ton of stuff. Pick one thing, right? Pick the one that kind of got your attention, work on it for a few weeks or a month, see if it helps. If it helps, keep doing it. And then you can layer on more strategies. If it doesn't help, ditch it, try something else. Most people, if they put their mind to it and they slowly, gently try strategies one after the other, they can find a few layers that work together that will help them. So there is absolutely hope, even if you've struggled for decades.
And getting back to the electronics again, if you get
Mm.
up at night because you can't sleep, is it a good idea to get on your iPhone? No.
No, no. So on devices, there are programs which at least dull the blue light. So on my laptop, I have a program called Flux, Flux. It's very good. As soon as it thinks it's nighttime where you are, of course, thinks my computer is in Alberta, so it doesn't quite work, but um, assuming you're not constantly traveling, it will be very accurate and it will go yellow. Your whole screen will go yellow at sunset in your wherever you are. And then on my phone, I have one called, I think it's called Iris, and it does the same thing. So now I have my phone, it's like a red kind of background, not red, but kind of a muddy red, gray, dull background all the time. It's made a huge difference.
Hmm.
But I would say when you get up at night, do not use any devices because they are off and they're not in your bedroom. Because the studies have been done that show it's not only the blue light, it's the stress of being on your device. Oh, I've got to check my email. Oh, did my boss mention the meeting agenda for tomorrow? Did my son get home last night? Like all of these things, it's not only the light, it's also the thinking and the worry associated with the emails and the social media that they now think is contributing to the sleep problems.
Wow. Great. So much great information. But yeah, you're right. It's our modern world that we live in, all the
Yeah.
electronics and things we are surrounding ourselves with. Let's see. I'm gonna just see if there's any other
Whoa.
questions here.
So the name of the light bulb is NIRA, Nira. So that stands for near infrared something. The A's on the end just to make it sound flow off the tongue. So NIRA is the name of that company. And the name of the blue light blockers, again, there's so many brands out there. There may be some excellent ones. I just tend to go, like if I can find an inexpensive one that does the trick, I tend to go with that. Again, I don't own shares in Honeywell. I get no kickbacks, but it's the cheapest one. So it's UVEX is what to search.
Okay. And I'll put these also in the follow-up email that when I send the
Perfect.
replay. So,
Okay.
all right. Just do a quick look and see if there was any other question about the aura rings. This gentleman has always tracked deep sleep and REM. Okay, do I
It
need to be
does.
concerned with light sleep stats?
Again, I wouldn't be so concerned with the stage data as the overall, how much are you sleeping and how many times did you wake up, which it will show you in a little graph. That's probably more helpful because again, the sleep stages may not be
Mhm.
totally accurate.
And the same gentleman who uses this ordering says that his sleep efficiency, 75 years old, his sleep efficiency has dropped significantly. Is that due to
Mm.
chronic illness, getting older, or both?
Could be both, right? Chronic
Mhm.
illnesses interfere with sleep. If you're in pain, if you have poor mitochondrial function, which is probably at the core of most fatiguing disorders, it takes energy to sleep, right? That's why lack of consciousness isn't the same thing as good quality sleep. The brain is very active during sleep, doing all of this repair. So we need energy to sleep, and anything that's associated with fatigue, probably that's why our sleep is poor. If you need prescription glasses, yes. So you can get little clip-ons, kind of like the clip-on sunglasses with the yellow, orange, or red that go over prescription glasses. I'm thinking about that because I have kind of the big, bulky, quite ugly ones.
Mhm.
They've come out, I've had them for like 10 years, so the clip-ons have come out more recently.
Yeah, and like the TV, whole idea of having, again, the TV in the room, not advisable.
No.
So if someone has that, it's again, it's part of the retraining, right? To
Yeah.
move away from,
And I can say
line.
it so easily, right? Because I'm in a van, I don't even have a TV. But and many people, so I remember working with many patients who really said the TV helps them get to sleep. And
Hmm.
maybe they've had trauma. So people who have experienced, there's so many complexities and nuances to all of this. I've given you like the really simple version, and many of you will have to work with your healthcare team to adapt maybe some of the strategies for your own situation. So many people who have experienced trauma, they need background noise to fall asleep. They get anxious when it's very quiet. So there's always exceptions to every rule. And I
Hmm.
would say that's where a wearable tracker is really handy. If you think that your TV is helping you fall asleep and get a better sleep, track it, and then try taking it out for a couple weeks and compare it and see for yourself. And then do whatever is giving you the best quality sleep. So there's no absolute rules in medicine. It's all try to do what's practical and what works for you.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, not to make it so overwhelming. You start off with one thing and work with
Yeah.
it, and it's a trial and error, right? So you're your own detective. There may be one thing that you've said today that may just really stick out with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, this whole thing of getting up first thing and getting that outside light, because sometimes it's just you're rushing to get to work, but now for
Totally.
me, I've made it a non-negotiable that even if I can't go for a 15 or 20-minute walk, I'm going to go around the block. I'm going to get
Yeah.
out. So I'm trying to create that habit, that's, that regulation within myself. And I notice a big difference. Like it makes me feel much better and kind of, so I'll work with that. So I
Yeah.
think,
That's a big change
yeah.
I've made recently
Mhm.
since I've been learning the importance. Of course, it's a little bit easier in my banks. I have to go out to go pee. But that's a big change. And yeah, I think I like, oh, it's daytime. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that brings a whole nother maybe can of worms or whatever. But when it comes to that whole intermittent fasting, and because when you're not ingesting food in the
Right.
morning, like, and that's impacting, right? So,
So,
yeah.
this changed, you listen to different experts and
Hmm.
they all have a lot of knowledge and sometimes they conflict. So
Yeah.
many experts say intermittent fasting is good. And the longer you can extend that fasting window, especially into your first exercise bout of the day, the better. But the quantum biology, circadian biology people say, no, it's much better to eat within an hour of getting the sun in your eyes because that's giving your body a second signal that it is truly daytime. So,
Hmm.
again, I think some of these things you have to experiment.
All
and
right.
see what works better for you. We're all so different.
Wow.
I
Okay.
see a lot of thank yous. I'm
Yeah.
totally open to, follow-up questions. My email address is on my webpage if you have questions just that didn't get answered today enough, or questions about other things that I offer. Feel free to contact me. And thank you for your attendance. It was great. Have 103 people show up,
Yeah,
and
there were more
hopefully
there
no one fell
slowly.
asleep.
Yeah. I promised everyone they weren't going to fall asleep because they want to listen to what you have to say.
Okay.
So just take this moment and this opportunity. So yes, for people who have other questions or things they want to share, then you can, I will send up all the information on the follow-up email with the replay page, so that you can contact Dr. Stein and, share your experiences, share your questions. And with that, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much. This has been really great, an eye opener. And I think for, like you said, there's so many things that we learn about, and with Instagram and all the suggestions that they have, it gets overwhelming. So we do need to, come from this place of calmness, and then to see what's the
Yeah.
next best step for you. So keeping that in mind and being kind to yourself in this process, because people have been not sleeping well for a very, very long time. So
Yeah.
just trying some of these tips and techniques. And then I'm sure, like you said, you have a handout, which when I send that replay page, they can have access to that so that
Okay.
they can start bringing into some habits that will help them. So
Thank you
thank
so much
you.
for the opportunity. You guys ask great questions. And like I said, I'm just so impressed. Most people who answered the survey are already doing a lot of things really well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the little tweaks and
Yeah.
nuances that, yeah. So thank you so much, and wishing everyone a beautiful rest of your day, a restful sleep. Get outside, enjoy some light, and we'll see you on the flip side. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Ellie.
Bye-bye.